Hello everyone. Welcome to a series on my channel that I call Parenting It Ain't for the Weak. In this series, I'll be talking about different things that's parenting related. And just to kind of, having been doing this for, I would say, almost 20 years now? Well, this is almost 20. Yeah, I think I have a little something to say about that. So I was having a conversation. I wanted to start this off by, what sparked this actually was a conversation that I had with my sons last night coming home from dinner. I decided to take heartbeat number 1 and number 3 out last minute, spur of a moment kind of thing. We were like, it's like 8:30 at night. Do y'all want to go out to eat something? Like, yeah, we've got like our favorite Asian restaurant about 20 minutes from the house. So I'm like, okay, let's just go grab something to eat real quick. So we went there, of course, we ate. On our way back, we were having a crazy discussion. I don't even know what sparked it, but we were talking about how different they all are. I have I have 3, and I'm specifically talking about the boys, so there's 3 of them. My oldest is as chill as a cucumber, like not confrontational at all, but you push his button one too many times, he's gonna come. But for the most part, like, he's so chill. And he hasn't always been like that. When he was younger, he had a temper on him. So through prayer and counseling, it's been a complete 360. And the middle is a classic middle child. He just goes with each other. Never really had anything that stood out that I would say he overcame. And the youngest, he pretty chill, but he's the friendliest. Well, he's got more friends than everybody. Like, he's the one who would, do the sleepovers, go sleep at somebody's house, have somebody sleep over and all that good stuff. But when he was younger, like, he was, again, through the power of God and counseling, being a stern parent, not hesitating to discipline, and everything's kind of turned around now. Now, it's a great thing to hear people say, oh, your boys are so nice, your boys are so respectful, your boys are so, there's been nothing crazy to report, thank God. And hopefully at this point moving forward, there won't be anything to report as far as anything negative. We just give God all the thanks. But I had this conversation to say, we never know as parents what the kids are going through. For the most part, it's been us. We've been blessed to the point where there has been no scenarios of, being a female raising 3 boys. There's been no scenarios of, light outages or losing power or having the water cut or anything. So I can't come here and say, we had it hard or anything like that. It was tough. It was a struggle trying to juggle things, doing this, that, and the third. But I had a village. Their dad being in a different state. Once we worked out our differences, it was not crazy at all. There was no drama per se. However, we were just talking about how different it was. And when we were going through the challenging times, especially with the youngest, who majority of this conversation was with, I had to ask the questions like, what was going through your mind at the time? Like, why were you so, there was nothing around you. We lived in a good neighborhood. You didn't have any friends that were kind of acting kind of crazy or being defiant or anything like that. So what was it that kind of spurred your actions? And he's like, Mom, I really don't know. I see to a certain extent how, scenarios like this could cause our children to go to the left simply because, there's a lot. Like, I had to make sure everything was everything, like everything was on point for them, so they didn't have to, want for anything. And I had them in activities, and I had them in church, and surrounded by, athletes, and started playing since 6. I made the conscious decision, because football, for one, was not something I liked. It made no sense to me. Like, I didn't understand why people enjoyed hitting each other. Like, why? But realizing early on that with 3 boys, being a single mom, I had to make decisions. I had to know where my strengths were and what my weaknesses were. I can only do this up to a certain point, as far as disciplining, as far as conversations, as far as mentoring. I can mentor from a female standpoint, but they needed positive male role models in their lives. They needed some form of structure. So having them, lean into, keeping them in church. We went every Sunday, every Wednesday night, without fail. They could have football practice. We'll get out of practice. We headed to church on Wednesday nights. It was like there was that routine. But with all of that, in my opinion, looking back, and especially with him not, he couldn't put a finger on it, couldn't say why. I just think that kids respond differently to situations. Kids respond to the unseen. There was no violence. They were not exposed to any physical altercations. There was nothing going on. However, in their psyche, they knew it was just mom. So in my mind, I think that was a cry for help. Like the oldest, like I said, he was always angry, and nothing could spark the anger, but it was just there. It's like just bubbling, waiting for a little thing, and then he'll just blow up. And then, like I said, the youngest, he was just bad. Like, doing things, coming up with stuff. He would be the kid who would say, "I'm sick," just so he doesn't go to school, or "I did the homework, but he didn't do it," or just all the things that he wasn't a teenager, he was under 10. He was the one having issues at school, having the parent-teacher conferences, all of that stuff. And through prayer, by God's grace, he, it hit him, and then, like, eventually they kind of simmered down. Now, I was a stern parent. Like, I didn't hesitate to discipline. I didn't hesitate. There was no talking back. There was no, let's talk about it. Some of y'all may not like it, but it worked for me, to the point where even as teenagers, now the older they got, when they started, like late middle school to high school, you start having conversations, and you start, picking their brain. But at such tender ages, elementary school, you know what I mean? Like first grade, 6, 10 years old, there's nothing to talk about, as in, you can tell me why you feel the way you feel, but ultimately it's going to be, I get to make the decision on what it is that we're doing. And, eventually they realize this is how it's going to be. And once they start reining in and knowing that there are consequences for their actions, and they started paying that consequences up to and including, you're gonna miss a game, you're gonna lose your phone, you're not, you know what I mean, like, you're gonna get punished, it clicked. So in having that conversation, I guess I would say parenting is indeed not for the weak. You cannot trade your parenting. Some of the decisions I had to make were hard. The decision to have you work all week at practice, and then I tell your coaches, you're not going to play this game. You're going to sit on the sidelines. You're going to dress up and sit on the sidelines. And I know you really, really wanted to play, but, like things like that. It found its way, it made its way home, and they realize for everything that you do, good or bad, there's a consequence. So if you want to continue playing, if you want to hang out with your friends, if you wanted to have whatever it is, you have to make sure your grades are right. You have to make sure you're respectful. You have to make sure you're doing what you need to do so things run smoothly. And when it's all said and done, I think kids cry out in different ways. I can only speak from my experience being a single mom raising them, that, it could have been, a situation where they were trying to, figure things out as they got older. Why is it only mom? Dad's not in the house. Or, I can get over, that now it doesn't matter whether the kids are going to try to, as much as they possibly can, to get away with stuff. But, there was the disadvantage, especially being the female, raising males, so, maybe in their head, like, okay, if I do this, I may be able to get away with it, and little by little, if you don't nip it at the beginning, you're going to pay for it later. And so, even though some of these, I think, were just their way of acting out or expressing themselves based on what it is that they were going through, which I could never, for the life of me, tell you, what was going on in their heads. At this point, they can't even tell you what was going on in their heads. But I just think it was one of those scenarios where you catch it early, it's easier later on, because once the rules are set and there's resistance, but once they get to the understanding that we can't get over on this one, just do the right thing, it's easier to do the right thing. Once that clicks in their head, then it's smooth sailing. They're older now, decisions are being made by them. They have, thank God, have good heads on their shoulders. They positive people in society. My oldest has been gone. I was just thinking about it the other day. He spent a whole, it's been a whole year pretty much. So he did a whole year at school, and nothing. It was never, because they've never lived away from me. They've had like gone to their dad for like summer breaks, but with their schedules, majority of the time it will be dad coming down as opposed to them going to where he's at. The normal thought of, I'm away from home, I don't have anybody telling me what to do, I'm just wild out. No. The middle, same thing for the most part. If he's not training or in class, you can find him in his dorm. Like, they're not tripping over, I got all this freedom now, I'm going to just go do whatever I want to do. So my takeaway, in wrapping this up, I think I've gone a little longer. My message to any and every mom out there who is dealing with kids either on her own or even with a partner, and it's just like, where is all of this coming from? Hold tight. Trust God that he won't give you anything that you can't handle. Believe that you were made for this, and don't give up. Consistency is key with kids, and like I always say, parenting ain't for the weak. You got this, sis. You can do this. And you'll look back. It goes by fast, and you'll look back and you're like, where did the time go? We did it, Therefore, you're going to forever be on your knees praying for them when they're out, that they, not influenced by the wrong people or anything like that. But when it's all said and done, what it is that you put into and pour into them is what they're going to fall back on. When things get hard, when things get rough, they'll know where to come back. Always keep the door open. Let them understand that discipline, good, bad, or indifferent, it's not for fun, but it's for their own good. Remember, you got this. Parenting, it ain't for the weak, but you got it. Have a good day.